Harold Brennan looked me dead in the eye across that conference table and said, "Fresh blood runs this company now, Drew." The room went quiet, not the polite kind of quiet you get when someone says something awkward. The kind of quiet you get when a hydraulic line snaps and everybody knows somebody's about to get hurt. There were 12 people at that table. Engineers I'd trained from scratch, production managers who'd been with me for over a decade, my 2 senior project leads who could build anything from a pump housing to a complete municipal system. Outside the window, I could hear the steady hum of our main production line. Inside, nobody moved. They all just stared at the blueprints spread across the table like they'd suddenly become the most fascinating technical drawings they'd ever seen. That was the moment right there on a Tuesday morning in March in a conference room that smelled like machine oil and burnt coffee. My name is Andrew Caldwell. I'm 47 years old, and for 23 years, I ran the engineering operations at Precision Manufacturing Systems out of Toledo, Ohio. Not on paper, not with a title that looked impressive on business cards, but in every way that actually mattered in this business, I built that company's technical foundation. I should back up. I met Rebecca Brennan at a company picnic when I was 26. She was smart and straightforward and had this way of cutting through nonsense that made me realize I'd been overthinking most things my whole life. We got married 2 years later. Her grandfather, Harold Brennan, ran a small manufacturing shop, 8 employees, 2 CNC machines, and a parts inventory that looked like it had been organized by throwing things at the wall. He offered me a job managing production engineering. I took it because Rebecca asked me to, and because I genuinely thought I could help. I had a mechanical engineering degree from Toledo, 4 years at an automotive parts supplier in Detroit. Nothing fancy, just solid technical background, and a lot of time reading manufacturing journals on weekends and lunch breaks. Precision manufacturing was bleeding efficiency from every operation, so I fixed it one system at a time, 1 year at a time. I redesigned our hydraulic assemblies in year 1, developed a pressure optimization protocol that reduced energy consumption by 22%, built our first quality control database from scratch in year 2, taught myself the software on my own computer at home, landed our first municipal contract in year 3. By year 8, we had 45 employees and were supplying pump systems to 3 counties. By year 15, we had over 120 employees, 2 production facilities, and a defense contract with the Army Corps of Engineers worth $185 million over 5 years. Harold gave me the Chief Technical Officer title somewhere around year 12. No equity, no ownership stake, just a title and a salary of $98,000 that hadn't changed in 3 years, even as the company I was engineering had quadrupled its technical capabilities. But here's the thing about working inside a family business when you married into it. You're never really family, you're always the in-law. The technical guy, the one who keeps the machines running so the real family can take credit at the annual shareholder dinner. I understood that in a practical way for most of those 23 years. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself the work was enough. Then Harold's grandson Tommy graduated with his MBA. Tommy Brennan was 29, sharp dresser, and had exactly 0 days of manufacturing experience. What he had was Harold's last name and a head full of business optimization theories that had never been tested against anything that actually produced physical products. He came into the company talking about operational synergies and manufacturing pivots. Meanwhile, he couldn't tell you the difference between a centrifugal pump and a positive displacement system, couldn't read a pressure gauge, couldn't explain why our hydraulic efficiency ratings moved the way they did. I trained him anyway because that's what you do. You show up, you do the work, you don't make it personal. For 16 months, I walked Tommy through every system I'd built, every client relationship I'd developed, every vendor partnership I'd structured over 2 decades. He took notes and nodded and occasionally used words like scalability in ways that made our machine operators look at each other and shrug. But I was patient. I figured Harold was easing him in gradually and that there'd be a real conversation at some point about transition planning. There was a conversation, just not the one I expected. Harold called the quarterly operations meeting on a Tuesday in March. I sat down at that conference table, expecting a standard project review. Instead, Harold stood up, thanked the team for a strong quarter, and announced that effective immediately, Tommy would be assuming the role of Chief Technical Officer and taking full technical oversight of Precision Manufacturing Systems. No heads up, no phone call the night before, not even a conversation in his office. I looked at Harold. He met my eyes for exactly 1 second, then looked away toward the production floor. I asked as calmly as I could what my role would be going forward. And that's when he said it. Fresh blood runs this company now. Drew has to, or will get left behind. 12 people in that room, the production line still humming outside, and every single person at that table suddenly found something very important to examine in the blueprint margins. I sat through the rest of that meeting for another 40 minutes, nodded when it was appropriate, shook Tommy's hand at the end, walked back to my workstation, and closed my laptop. On my desk was the engineering notebook I'd kept for 23 years. Black leather cover worn smooth at the corners from handling. I'd bought it at an office supply store in Detroit the week before I started at Precision, back when I thought I'd be there maybe 5 years. Learn the manufacturing business, figure out what came next. Inside was everything, every system modification I'd developed, every efficiency improvement I'd calculated, and the methodology behind it. Every vendor relationship I'd built from scratch with notes on specifications, delivery schedules, quality standards. Every client contact I'd cultivated with notes on their equipment needs, maintenance cycles, upgrade timelines. 23 years of technical knowledge in my handwriting. None of it on a company server, none of it backed up anywhere Harold or Tommy could access. I picked it up and held it for a while. That evening, Rebecca called. She'd already heard from her grandfather. She was quiet on the phone in a way that told me she'd already had the argument and lost. She said she was sorry. I told her I wasn't going anywhere yet, that I needed a few days to think. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already started thinking the moment I walked out of that conference room. I took 3 days, told the office I was working from home, which I did, just not on Precision work. I sat at my kitchen table with the notebook open and went through it page by page, not out of nostalgia, out of calculation. Here's what I found on day 2. Our 2 largest defense contracts, combined value just over $160 million annually, had both been negotiated by me personally. My name was the primary technical contact in each contract, with my direct phone number listed in the performance specifications. One of those contracts contained specific language requiring continuity of the designated technical lead as a condition of contract compliance. I'd written that language myself during negotiations 4 years ago without thinking too hard about what it meant for me personally. I was just trying to protect the company's technical reputation. Turns out I was protecting something else entirely. I pulled up the actual contract documents on my personal laptop, copies I'd kept for my own reference over the years, and read those clauses 3 times slowly. Then I looked at the pressure optimization system I developed in year 2 and refined every year since. It lived on a personal drive. I'd built it on my own time on my own equipment before Precision had any kind of technical database worth mentioning. There was no intellectual property assignment clause in my original employment contract. Harold's lawyer at the time was a general practice guy in Toledo who mostly handled commercial real estate. The system that had reduced Precision's energy costs by 30% over 8 years and given us a competitive edge on every municipal bid we'd won. It had never been formally transferred to the company. I closed the laptop and sat there with my coffee going cold. I want to be clear about what happened next because it would be easy to make it sound more dramatic than it was. I didn't feel like some guy in a movie who'd just discovered a secret weapon. Mostly, I just felt tired. Tired and very, very clear. I'd spent 23 years treating this company like it was mine, because in every functional sense it was. I'd acted in good faith every single day. I'd shared everything I built without ever asking for protection in return because it never occurred to me that I'd need it. That wasn't naivety, exactly.
That was trust, and trust, I was learning, is worth exactly what the other person decides it's worth. I thought about James Atlas.
Jim owned Atlas Industrial Solutions out of Columbus. We'd met at manufacturing conferences over the years, shared a table at an Army Corps procurement lunch once. He was the kind of guy who asked technical questions and actually listened to the answers. He'd reached out to me 2 times in the past 3 years. Nothing aggressive, just a standing offer. His last message about 8 months back. Drew, offer still stands. We value experience here. Gray hair means wisdom in this building. I'd ignored it both times out of loyalty, out of habit, out of the belief that eventually the people you build something for will recognize what you built. On the 3rd day, I called him. I was beginning to think you'd never pick up the phone, he said, and he sounded genuinely pleased, not smug about it. We met 2 days later at a diner outside Columbus, a place we'd eaten at before after contract presentations. No power dynamics built into the seating arrangement, just good food and a straight conversation. Jim was in his mid-50s, built like someone who'd operated machinery before he'd learned to read profit statements. He asked smart questions about hydraulic efficiency ratios, defense compliance cycles, municipal equipment lifecycle management. He didn't need me to explain the basics. That alone told me something. The offer was a $140,000 base salary, 6% profit sharing, senior VP of engineering over 2 production facilities, a team where the average age was 43. And then he said something I'd never once heard in 23 years at Precision. Your name goes on every contract you engineer. And if you've built systems on your own time with your own equipment, we have a formal acquisition process. Fair valuation. You get credited. I drove home that night thinking about the optimization system sitting on my personal drive. Rebecca was still awake when I got in. We sat at the kitchen table for a long time. She said, Grandpa built a shop. You built the company he is now. Those are two different things, Drew. She said it quietly, like she'd been holding it for a while and had finally decided to put it down on the table between us. I told her I was going to call Jim back in the morning. She nodded and said, "Good." I called Jim the next morning, told him I was in. We agreed on a start date 3 weeks out. I typed up my resignation letter that afternoon. 2 weeks notice, clean, professional, no complaints. Printed it on plain paper, not company letterhead. That felt right before I submitted it. I did something else first. I opened my laptop and drafted 2 separate emails. One to each of the defense procurement officers I'd worked with over the years, people I'd built real working relationships with, not company relationships, not Harold Brennan relationships. Mine. The emails were formal and straightforward. I informed each of them that I would be transitioning out of my role at Precision Manufacturing Systems, that my last day would be in 2 weeks, and that going forward I could be reached through Atlas Industrial Solutions in Columbus. I included Jim's company contact information and noted that I would be personally overseeing defense manufacturing operations in my new capacity. I didn't criticize Precision, didn't editorialize, just informed them of a change in my contact information, which I was fully entitled to do. Both of those contracts listed me as the designated technical lead. Notifying the relevant parties of my status change was not just my right, it was technically my obligation under the performance clause. I sent both emails, then walked the resignation letter down to Harold's office. He was on a call when I knocked, held up one finger without looking at me, finished his conversation, then leaned back in his chair the way he always did when he was about to deliver bad news. I put the letter on his desk. He read it in about 15 seconds. 2 weeks, he said. Not a question. 2 weeks, I said. He asked where I was going. I told him Atlas Industrial. His expression shifted. Not anger exactly, more like someone who just realized they'd left the pressure valve open during a stress test. He asked if we could talk about a different arrangement, maybe a consulting position alongside Tommy. I told him about the Atlas offer. He said they were overpaying. I told him that was between me and them. He said he hoped this wouldn't complicate things with Rebecca. I said that Rebecca and I had talked it through and were good. Then he said, "I built this company from nothing, Drew." I looked at him for a moment. "You built 8 employees and 2 CNC machines. Harold, I built the rest. We both know that." I walked out before he could answer. The next 2 weeks were strange in the way that endings always are when nobody wants to admit something is ending. Tommy started following me around with a legal pad. He had questions about everything. The defense contract renewal timelines, the vendor quality standards, how we handled Army Corps compliance audits, why we configured certain pump assemblies for municipal systems versus industrial applications. I answered every question completely professionally. If I was going to leave, I was going to leave clean. But there were 2 things I didn't hand over. The first was the pressure optimization system. Nobody asked me directly about it, which told me that Tommy didn't fully understand what it was, or that it existed as a separate proprietary tool. To him, it probably just looked like our equipment ran efficiently. He didn't know there was a specific system behind it, built on a personal drive refined on my own time for 23 years. The second thing I didn't hand over was the defense relationships. On my last Friday, Tommy stopped by my workstation around 4 Chown and asked if I'd set up a transition call with the Army Corps procurement contacts so he could introduce himself before I left. I told him I'd send him the contact information, which I did, names, emails, office numbers, everything that was in the public contract files. What I didn't tell him was that those procurement officers had already heard from me 2 weeks earlier, that they already had Atlas Industrial's information in their files. That when Tommy called those numbers on Monday morning and introduced himself as the new CTO of Precision Manufacturing, he'd be talking to people who already knew where I'd gone and who were already wondering whether they needed to reconsider their renewal conversations. I wasn't sabotaging Precision, I was just not carrying their water anymore. I cleaned out my workstation on that last Friday afternoon. The notebook went into my bag first, then a photo from the previous Christmas, Rebecca, me, and our son Matthew on the back deck. The kid grinning in a Toledo Engineering sweatshirt he'd worn almost every day since his acceptance letter arrived. Matthew had started his junior year that fall. The college fund that Harold had informally mentioned years ago, talked about at a family dinner, never written down, never formalized, had quietly, never materialized. Harold hadn't said a word about it. Neither had Rebecca's grandmother. It just disappeared the same way a lot of Harold's promises did. Gradually and without acknowledgement, we were paying for it ourselves. It was manageable, but barely. I picked up the photo, put it in my bag, and took one last look around the production floor I'd never technically owned. Through the window, I could see the equipment yard, 40-some pieces of machinery lined up in the afternoon light. Every efficiency improvement in every one of those systems built on protocols I'd created. I walked out at 5:30 on a Friday and didn't look back. Monday morning, Tommy started making phone calls. My first week at Atlas Industrial felt like stepping into a room where the air pressure was different. Not better or worse exactly, just different. Nobody called me the in-law. Nobody copied Harold on emails to keep him informed. When I walked into a meeting and explained something, people wrote it down and then actually implemented it. I had a real office. Door, nameplate, window facing the production floor. Small things, but after 23 years of a workstation in an open floor plan, I noticed. I spent the first month doing what I always did when I came into an operation, listening before talking, mapping before moving. I sat with the machine operators, walked the production floor during 2 different shifts to understand how Atlas's systems actually behaved versus how they looked on paper. I found 3 efficiency bottlenecks in the first 2 weeks that nobody had identified because nobody had been looking at the right data. Jim didn't hover. He checked in once a day, asked 1 question, and left me to work. That was new too. We began integrating the pressure optimization system into Atlas's operations in week 3. Jim's team had formally acquired it through the process he described at dinner. Documented fair market valuation, my name on the filing. It wasn't a fortune. That wasn't the point. The point was that for the first time in 23 years, something I'd built was officially, legally, unambiguously mine, and then mine to sell on my terms to someone who understood what it was worth. Within 6 months, energy efficiency across Atlas's primary operations had improved 28%. Production error rates dropped. Quality control numbers went up enough that Jim put them in the company's federal bid documentation. Documentation that was being prepared for an Army Corps manufacturing contract covering the Great Lakes region. The same region, as it happened, that Precision Manufacturing had held for the past several years. Both companies submitted bids. I knew Precision's numbers better than Tommy did. I knew their cost structure, their margin tolerances, their weaknesses in quality control consistency. I didn't use any of that information improperly. I just built the best bid I could with Atlas's actual capabilities. And Atlas's actual capabilities, now running on better systems with better data, were genuinely stronger. The defense contract went to Atlas, $95 million over 4 years. The week after the award was announced, my phone rang. The number was a Toledo area code I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was Tommy. He left a message that was 6 minutes long. The short version: Precision was struggling with both defense contract renewals. Some of the contacts weren't responding well to him, and he was wondering if I'd be willing to consult informally. Maybe just a couple of calls to help smooth things over. He said Harold didn't know he was calling. He said he'd really appreciate it. I listened to the message twice, then called him back. I told him I'd be glad to help in a formal consulting capacity. My current rate for external technical consulting was $250 an hour, billed in 4-hour minimums with a 5-session retainer required up front. I told him I could have a contract drawn up within the week if he wanted to move forward. He said he'd have to think about it. He never called back. Harold called 4 times over the following month. I let everyone go to voicemail. Each message was a variation of the same theme: consulting opportunities, bringing my expertise back in a different capacity, substantial compensation, what happened to family. The 4th message had an edge to it that the first 3 didn't. He mentioned the word loyalty twice and used the phrase "after everything I've done" once. I sat with that for a day. Loyalty. 23 years of 6:30 start times and vendor calls on Saturday mornings and Army Corps compliance reviews that ran until 8 at night. 23 years of treating their problems like my problems because I'd stopped being able to tell the difference. If that wasn't loyalty, I didn't know what the word meant. And if it was, then Harold had gotten 23 years of it without ever putting my name on anything I built. I called him back on a Sunday morning. He picked up on the second ring, started talking before I could say anything. The company, the restructuring, the challenges, how much had changed since I left. I waited until he stopped. Then I said, "Harold, you told me fresh blood runs that company. You were right about that." And I hung up. 6 months later, I got a call from a reporter at Manufacturing Today. She'd heard about the defense contract win and wanted to talk about the technical improvements behind Atlas's bid. We did a 45-minute phone interview. The article ran the following month. My name in the headline, my photo, a full description of the optimization system I'd built and what it had done for Atlas's operational performance. First time in 23 years my name had appeared in print in connection with work I'd actually done. Jim framed a copy and left it on my desk without saying anything about it. I noticed it when I came in Monday morning. I left it there. Around that same time, I found out through Rebecca that Precision Manufacturing had sold 35% of the company to a regional competitor to stabilize their cash position after losing the defense contracts. Harold stepped back from day-to-day operations not long after. Tommy stayed on in a reduced capacity. I don't know the details and I don't need them. What I do know is that at the Great Lakes Manufacturing Conference in Detroit that fall, Atlas Industrial was recognized for both the defense contract win and the operational improvements we'd posted over the previous year. Jim said a few words, then introduced me as the chief architect behind the technical work. I shook some hands, answered some questions, talked shop with people who understood what I was talking about. Rebecca was there. She'd driven down from Toledo for the evening. She stood next to me during the reception in a blue dress I hadn't seen in a while, and she looked like someone who'd made a decision and was comfortable with it. On the drive home, she told me that Matthew had made the dean's list both semesters. I'd like to take credit for that, but the kid had always been sharper than me. He called the following week, said he'd seen the Manufacturing Today article online, said the headline was pretty cool, Dad. That's about as much praise as a 20-year-old engineering student is going to hand out, and I'll take it. Here's what I want to leave you with, because I've thought about it a lot in the year since all of this happened. I spent 23 years building something inside a structure that was never going to give me credit for it. Not because the work wasn't good, not because they didn't know the work was good, but because the structure wasn't designed to see me. If you've spent decades running someone else's operation, a family business, a company that has your fingerprints on everything, but your name on nothing, you already know what I'm talking about. You felt that slow realization that loyalty only runs one direction in certain rooms. Know what you actually own. Not what you've contributed to, not what you've been allowed to use. What is legally, documentably, provably yours. Your relationships, your systems, your methods, your name in the right clause of the right contract. Document everything. Date everything. When the day comes, don't leave angry. Leave prepared.